Hi there, welcome to edupediaworld.com. You're watching the videos on Lucid's geometry. So in this chapter we'll discuss some of the basic concepts of geometry, how geometry evolved, what is the practical use of geometry, how the geometry is used in construction work, how the geometry is used in measurement of volumes and areas. And then let me tell you once again, this chapter is a theoretical chapter and it is kind of difficult and to understand in a scenario of mathematics when you are studying mathematics, but it's very interesting chapter. You get to know a lot of uses of geometry, how geometry is used in ancient history, how we can use geometry right now in practical scenarios, and you can relate that things with the current day. So it's very interesting topic actually, and you have to watch the videos very carefully and slides also. So let's start. So in this topic we'll discuss introduction to Lucid's geometry, uh, how the geometry evolved, and from where the a lot of Egyptians, we know that they built pyramids, and Indians, they build very well culture societies and civilization. So how they use the geometry. Then we'll study how the Greek mathematician Thales first recognized the logical reasoning behind the geometry. Then we'll discover a main personality behind the geometry postulate, that is Lucid, a teacher of mathematics in Egypt. So again we'll study each and every topic through slides, so that you can better understand the theory and better you can relate the concepts. So let's get started with the first topic. It is introduction to geometry. Now the word geometry, that comes from Greek word, that is geo. Geo means earth. The Greek calls me earth means geo, and then metrian means to measure. Means geometry means you have to measure the earth, because in the ancient history, every country, or Greeks or Indians or Egyptians, were running behind how we can measure the big lands, how we can measure the volumes of big granaries. So that's why they use the meaning of how we can measure the earth measurements. Now geometry appears to have originated from need for measuring lands, because they have to build big forts, and you have must have seen in various subcontinents of India, and they have to measure the volume of big tanks or big refineries or big, we can say, big storehouses where they can store the grain. So all of sudden they have to use the geometry indirectly or directly. So that's actually importance of geometry. Now, this branch of mathematics actually was studied in various forms in ancient history. Now, this branch was studied in various forms. Some Egyptians used it for construction work, that is known as civil engineering. Indians used to build a different kind of architectural work, or you can say different civilization. You must have heard about Harappa culture and everything. And Greece used also for construction work and for some kind of artistic work. Now, the people of these civilizations faced several practical problems which required the development of geometry in various ways. Now, let me tell you, all of Indian or Chinese or Greece, all of were using the same concepts, but they didn't have any idea that they what type of concepts they are using. So without any logical concepts they were using, but they assumed it as a universal truth. So there was no rational reasoning behind the concepts of geometry. So so that's why they were facing a lot of practical problems. So now we'll discuss through example how the Greece, I'm sorry, you'd say, how the Egyptians used the geometry to overcome the problems. Now, in Egypt there is a river Nile. Always has a problem that it always overflowed, and it actually erupts the boundaries of nearby areas. So they actually Egyptians needed a way to stop this flow of water. So they actually use the concept of geometry to make a boundary or that much solid so that it can hold the water. So that is how the Egyptians were the first to use a geometrical concept. And again, there was only Egyptians who knew the formula of pyramid, how to calculate the volume of pyramid or area of truncated pyramid. I use, as you can see in the figure below. So again, The Egyptians used a correct formula to calculate the area and the volume of the truncated pyramid. So that's why you can see a lot of pyramids built in Egypt. So this was a bit of introduction to geometry. So let's move on to the next topic, which is geometry in the Indian subcontinent. Now, in the Indian subcontinents, you must have learned in history also. There was very well cultured civilization, that was Harappa and Mohenjo-daro civilization, that is also known as Indus Valley civilization. Now, made you extensive use of geometry, as you can say highly organized society or well organized buildings or very well planned drainage system. You must have seen in the, or you must have learned in the history or social sciences subject. Now, for example, the roads were parallel to each other. Right now, in the current scenario, we can say that whenever the government builds a bridge or constructs a road, they actually use a concept of geometry to make a road smooth, or they can make a roads parallel. So actually, the same concepts are being used again and again, but the difference is, in the ancient time, people didn't have any standardized system to use the geometry, but right now, in a globalization world, we have a standardized system to use the geometry, so that anybody in the world can understand what concepts we are using to build a road. So there was underground drainage system. The houses had many rooms of different types. They have many different type of rooms. Right now, we also do have, if there is a big house, like we can say bungalows, so they have different type of rooms. So right now also engineers, or we can say any construction workers, they also use directly or indirectly the concepts of geometry only to build big houses. Now, this shows that the town dwellers were skilled in mensuration and practical arithmetic. Means at that time also, in the ancient time also, the workers was very skilled, because without this kind of skill, they would have not been able to develop the big houses or that much well planned civilization. So the bricks used for construction were clean fired, means they were also clean fire. Right now we also have a clean fire bricks we use right now also to build houses, and the ratio of the length is to breadth and thickness was 4 is to 2 is to 1. So this was the then in the ancient time a standard, you can say, ratio for the brick. Now, in ancient India also, so there was a manual created which is known as Salvastrus, and that manuals contain the geometrical construction. You can say like we have a manual for when we buy a mobile phone, we have a manual how to operate that mobile phone. So the same thing was there. Suppose any other civilization or any other king want to build a big house or something he wants to build over the area, then he can directly refer to this manual to get a geometrical construction, that how to build this thing. So his kingdom need not to reapply the concept again and again. Now, the geometry of Vedic period originated with the construction of altars or Vedas. Means there was Vedas. Vedas means there was ancient books where all the knowledge and concepts were written, so that anybody can refer to that concepts and knowledge, and can use the concept to build any kind of roads, or you can say drainage system, or any further civilization they can build. Fireplaces for performing Vedic rites. There were fireplaces to perform a Vedic rites. So the location of sacred fires has to be according to the clearly laid down instructions about their shapes and areas. Now, the fireplaces they used to provide a religious, you can say, rituals, has to be at the exact shapes and area. So you can understand that indirectly they were using the concept of mathematical geometry, but they didn't have any knowledge about that they are using it. They assume it as a universal, or I can say that if they were not able to figure out any logical reasoning behind the concept, say they assumed it as a universal truth. So that was the main practical problem at that time. Now, so whose shapes were combination of rectangles, triangles, trapeziums were required for public worships. The Then they consist of 9 interwoven isosceles triangles. These triangles were in such a way that they produce 43 subsidiary triangles. So you can see that how many concepts of geometry they were using. And though accurate geometrical methods were used for construction altars, the principle behind them were not discussed. See, you can read it very clearly that although they were using a very highly concept of geometry, but these principles they assumed it as a universal truth that it is by the nature of God. So then they didn't knew that it is actually a concept of mathematical. So this was a bit history about the geometry in Indian subcontinent. Now, so now we will discuss Greek mathematician Thales, who actually for the first time felt for establishing a reasoning behind the geometrical concept. So actually we can say the Greeks were the first to figure out the reasoning behind the geometry. So they were the first personalities. Now the Greeks actually were interested in establishing the truth of statements they discovered, and emphasis was on the reasoning behind why certain construction works. Means we can say that they actually everybody in the world were using geometrical concepts, but Greek the only personalities felt that there has to be some reason behind the construction works, that there has to be reason why we are using 90-degree angles, or we are using triangles, trapezium, square. Why not any other figure for such a building or something like that? So actually they felt they tried to figure out it. So a Greek mathematician Thales is credited with the giving first known proof. So there was a first mathematician Thales who was credited with the first known proof. This proof was of statement that a circle is bisected, that is cut into two equal parts by its diameter. Now his first actually proof, or the we can say logical reasoning behind the geometry, was that if we have a circle and we have a diameter, so if we cut the circle through the diameter, we have equal parts. So that actually give the Thales the concept that there is a logic behind the geometry. One of the Thales famous pupils was Pythagoras. His follower. Everybody know what is a Pythagoras theorem, that we have base, height and hypotenuse. So everybody knows that what is a Pythagoras theorem, and whom you have heard about it. Pythagoras and his group discovered many geometrical properties. Actually, through Pythagoras theorem only, like we have hypotenuse square equals to perpendicular square plus base square. So actually through Pythagoras and that Greek mythology, that circle can be divided into two equal half, they discovered many geometrical properties and developed the theory of geometry to a great extent. So this is how the first logical work about the geometry work started, with the help of two Greek mathematicians, Thales and Pythagoras. So now let's discuss about lucids. So what is the role of lucids in geometry? Now, Lucid was a teacher of mathematics at Alexandria in Egypt. He was just a teacher of mathematics, like we have teacher in mathematics in our universities and colleges. And he collected all the known work and arranged it in his famous treatise called Elements. Now what he did is he collected all the information about geometry, how everybody is using the geometrical concept, even the Greeks, how they are using the geometry, and what they are trying to deduce the logical reasoning behind the geometry. So after collecting the information, he formed into we can say a booklet known as Elements. So he divided the elements into 13 chapters. He created a big book, and that book contained of 13 chapters. So every chapter at that time was known as Elements. Now these books influenced the whole world understanding of geometry for generations to come. Actually, this is the how the manual of geometry started, and this is how the whole world was influenced, that everybody was using the different and highly complicated concept of geometry, but nobody knew that how we can formulate, or we can make a standardization use of geometry for our generations. So this was a bit of introduction about the lucid geometry, or we can say how the geometry evolved. So in this chapter we shall discuss geometrical lucid support to approach to geometry. That now in this chapter we'll discuss various postulates and axioms. We can say postulates are that which we talked earlier about, the universal truths, and axioms are the deductions, or we can deduce logical reasoning from postulates. So actually nowadays postulate and axioms are the same thing, and we'll discuss how we can link it with the present day geometry. That what is point, we'll discuss what is point, and what is a surface, what is line, what is line segment. So we'll discuss each and everything uh, through the next videos. So keep watching further videos. Have a nice day.